disability, Nolutando. Just a question to you. What? Just to get things kicked off, what has it actually inspired you to focus on people with disability within Africa Tikkun?
All right. Thank you, Lena.
In your life, just in general, because you live, eat, and sleep disability on a daily basis, and obviously it's your purpose and it's something that drives you. And what has been your inspiration to that?
So I've been with Africa Tikkun for years, and as a child protection organization, and we've reached a point where we mastered child protection and child abuse. And what we realized in our journey as Africa Tikkun was that there are children that are still left at home that are hidden because of their disability. And that actually led us to say, but what can we do? But we also, at that time, we knew that we're not specs of disability. So what we did was to make sure that we mobilize mothers of children with disabilities so that we can have a space where they can actually come for support. So I'm a social worker by profession, so psychosocial support is very important to me. And we know that if a person is disempowered emotionally, then they are totally disempowered in other areas of their lives. So as Africa Tikkun then, we then started this support system for the mothers of children with disability. And we are very intentional by supporting them emotionally, by strengthening them emotionally. So that after that, when they were like that, they became actually our people who were going into the community, mobilizing other women so that they can come and we support them as Africa Tikkun. We had a good program. Remember, we had that project on Paying People. So Paying People project was all about creating awareness within your community about your child that you have that is disabled. So you invite the neighbors, the people that you're staying with within your neighborhood, so that they can now know that I have Tando has autism. What is autism? So we were not ambitious. We just wanted that conversation, to start that conversation, and just to create awareness about it. Over the years, it has developed now that those mothers are part of our staff members now, because now they have the lived reality of raising a child that is disabled, but also they're passionate about that. So we've taken them through different trainings as Africa Tikkun. And I must say, when I look into those women, when you ask them, where's the father? There's no support system. As soon as they're pregnant, they'll tell you that as soon as I'm pregnant and I give birth to a child that is disabled, then there's a lot of things that happen. A stigma, there's discrimination. I'm labeled as a woman that gave a child that is disabled. So now Africa Tikkun has become their home. And from the social perspective, providing support, but also wanted to see the difference in terms of the community. Because as Africa Tikkun, we're not only servicing South Africans. Our centers, they literally give services to the continent because we have children from all over. So we have different programs that we are supporting the mothers, but it has developed to the point whereby it's not only about the mothers. Now we encourage them once they're already empowered emotionally to now find the diagnosis so that we can also support them. Once we have the diagnosis, that guides us how do we then support the child, the mother, the family as the whole. So it's different project, and we've realized a lot as well that now them having children that are disabled and not having anywhere to go, they can't work, meaning that they struggle as well. So now we have different projects that are looking at economical development for the mothers as well. For example, this month, November, we've been doing the candle making, perfume making, water purification. So that, when you have your money, that also builds you as a person. But what we pride ourselves with, again, with Africa Tikkun and as the disability department, is that early detection is very important, or early diagnosis, so that we can be able to nurture the child, assist where we can assist, so that the child, again, Mark mentioned that, it's more on the emotional part of things, it's more on the psychological part of things. Once we identify the challenge, we're able then to build the child, and so that when we place them in for work opportunities, we're looking at reasonable accommodation. We can communicate with the funders to say, we've assessed Tando, this is how you can reasonably accommodate Tando in your space. And we as Africa Tikkun, we support Tando that has been placed with you for that period that they're with you.
100%.
Yeah.
First of all, I think you should become the marketing manager. You did a great job. Second of all, I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is the level of ignorance that exists. When communities don't have a solution, they tend to isolate. They don't want to see it, they want to remove it, and as a result, particularly in impoverished communities, we make a broad sweeping statement, but very often because you don't have a solution that you can address, you tend to try and want to push it to the side. So families get pushed to the side. And that's where you talk about stigmatization of individuals and families. It's actually easy to break that down if you can offer a solution, particularly in impoverished solutions, particularly in South Africa. We have a principle called Ubuntu, which means we effectively support one another. But we support one another when we find solutions. So what Africa is trying to do is trying to show that there is, in fact, a solution. The Painted Purple campaign was one where a woman whose child suffered from spinal bifida painted her shack in the middle of the township environment, bright purple, and she wrote on it that this is my son's condition, supported by Africa Tikkun. And in the space of 2 months, we had 7 other families who stepped forward who'd been hiding their disabled kids because they didn't want the community to even know that they were harboring a child with such a disability. And it was remarkable that when communities started to see that there was a solution, they came to support one another. The next door neighbors, clubbed in to help support so that the mother could go and get herself a job and the child could be looked after by elderly grandparents and stuff of that nature. So there is this human kindness, this sense of responsible kindness that people will adopt if they're given the opportunity. And that's what we're trying to do with our cradle to career approach of disability inclusion.
100%. Thank you. So a few months ago, interesting enough, we actually have one of our candidates who, by the name of Frank, he was at university and he was actually attacked with a golf club where they came into his res and they stole quite a number of his different items. And he was left in a coma and came out of the coma after 2 or 3 months with the inability to walk. And he was, from an intellectual point of view, he had quite a few, he has actually quite a few challenges. Spent a year in OT and rehab and joined our learnership program on, I think it's around management, and has been placed in one of our largest organizations. And I got a call from one of the people in the organizations to say, Frank, he's not coping, he's a bit slow, he's got certain issues, he's not as fast as the others. And we actually went to address this with the organization. And what we just couldn't believe is one of the largest organizations in the country, they were not able to give him reasonable accommodation, assistive technology. And this is what definitely sparked my interest and sparked our interest in talking to you, Katie, as the Valuable 500, is around a partnership that we can form to understand why it's so important for reasonable accommodation, for a technology, for people to actually understand what it means for someone who has a disability to arrive at the office or at work. So in terms of the partnership, what are we, or what should we expect to see as the outcome of this partnership between Africa Tikkun and Valuable 500?
Thank you, Nana. And if I may say, and I promise I will directly answer that question, but as a sort of a lead into it, I just wanted to build on what you were sharing there, Mark, and huge apologies if I mispronounce or get this word wrong, but I think you said Ubuntu, is that right? Is that
Ubuntu, with a B. Ubuntu.
with a book? Thank you.
Ubuntu.
Because the way we operate with the Valuable 500, it's not as beautiful sounding as the word you shared, but we talk about the power of the collective, supporting each other, radical collaboration, and specifically we work with our companies to take synchronized collective action. So we work with all these big companies who, in and of their own right, are doing good work. They're humble. The most progressive ones are humble, and they rightly say we're not doing enough. But they are advancing along their disability inclusion journey. But we believe in supporting each other, like that beautiful story that you shared about the lady with her son and painting the house purple. Because if you are creating the right culture and the right environment where people feel comfortable to share their full story and share their whole human experience in genuinely all its gloriousness, because let's be honest, every single human is of worth and has value. And it is society that has, I suppose, come in and imposed that this group's better than this group, or if you live a certain way, or you feel a certain way, you look a certain way, you hear or speak a certain way, then you are different, and that difference is not celebrated, it's stigmatized. So we talk about synchronized collective action, which really channels in that inherent human kindness that you spoke about, Mark, about supporting each other, collectively coming together, I suppose, with that rising tide philosophy to really drive systems change. And yes, we talk about it in a business context, but as I said, where business goes, society will follow. And I do inherently, ever the optimist, I do believe in the good and the kindness of humanity. I genuinely think it is out there and it exists. And I think we need each other more than ever. So I think for us with our partnership, as I said, it's of huge importance for us. Africa and South Africa, I've been lucky enough to go to South Africa, the most beautiful country with the kindest, most energetic, passionate people. And I feel that our global communities, our global corporates will learn from that entrepreneurialism from South Africa, that sense of momentum, that sense of innovation, of having to do things differently because perhaps not everything has been handed to them. So there is a spirit that I think will really infuse and turbocharge the work that we do. But also I suppose, on a practical business level, a lot of our organisations are global, with a lot of representation within the African continent. But they also are coming to us saying we need help. So I think by partnering with Africa to Kun, we will be able to learn from each other, share that best practice, help drive policy advocacy. And I think at the heart of it as well, it is about promoting economic empowerment. So I think for us, we're not coming to you with all the answers. We have a framework, we have a philosophy, we have beautiful contacts, but I really think that it will be the most beautiful relationship, because like all relationships, good relationships, there will be a reciprocity. I think we can learn from each other, but I think it's of huge excitement and huge potential.
Thanks, Katie. And Mark, as someone who works with a lot of and very closely with CEOs of some of the biggest companies in South Africa, what do you believe, and why is it important that corporates actually in South Africa get involved in this event, in this partnership that we are having in March the 27th to be exact?
Katie, I'm going to pick up on something in answer to your question,
Sure,
but I'm going to pick on something Katie has used.
This is a conversation.
I think it's more than necessarily just the opportunity to do good. It's more than just, humanity's obligation to one another. I believe, in fact, that disability inclusion should not be an expense item on an income statement or balance sheet. In fact, there are so many jobs, so many professions that are performed better by individuals with disabilities that all the corporate needs to do is recognize that, in fact, they're making an investment. They're not dishing out charity. They're investing in their labor pool. And the benefits will be both measured as well as indirect in terms of just I've noticed even in Africa Tikkun, as we've increased the number of individuals who are disabled in our organization, and we had some resistance. We had a lot of teachers who used to say, I don't necessarily know how we're going to cope by having an individual who doesn't necessarily learn as quickly or speak as appropriately in our classrooms. And when we were able to provide a solution, what we experienced was that able-bodied individual school results, as well as disabled individual school results, both increased. Bullying levels dropped. We were producing better citizens, quite frankly, which impacts the labor force, and the labor force then becomes a much more productive labor force. So I think if corporates necessarily see that benefit, they're going to be able to justify the necessary investment that's going to be required, and not just see this as just a charitable outreach.
No, I 100% agree. And, happily the organisations that we work with understand that value. They understand that creating an inclusive workplace for all is not just a societal imperative, but it is a business imperative. And they see their businesses thrive and grow as a result. And I think conversely, and I think interestingly for me, A few years ago, we used to have to try and make the business case for disability inclusion for our organisations. Less and less we are having to make that case, because they know that if they don't create inclusive workforces, then their businesses will actually not survive. And again, you make a lovely point, Mark, that, wouldn't the world be a dull place if we all tackled the same problems in exactly the same way? Bringing in people with disabilities, a neurodivergent workforce, people with other gamuts of disability, who are, I suppose, forced on a daily basis to be life's original problem solvers. Because, it is if you think about the societal model of disability, it is the world, it's society that disables most people, because there's not access, it's not physically accessible. If I'm neurodivergent, there aren't quiet spaces for me. It is at the individual. They are able, but their abilities are different to perhaps, let's say, the majority. So inherently, you're bringing in people who are problem solvers, they are innovators, and they will come at things in a different way. And that inherently is brilliant for business. So we see at our organisation, the Valuable 500, increasingly the most sophisticated organisations are really driving total accessibility in terms of recruitment processes, because let's not forget, if your application form on a website is not accessible, then at the first hurdle, you are going to eliminate people who live with certain disabilities. So you have to think about it throughout the whole process. But it is, it would be lovely if everybody just subscribed to the fact that it is the right thing to do. But the reality is that it is fundamentally a business imperative. You will have a happier, more productive workforce. And if there is an initial element of investment, your return on investment, both from a business perspective and a human capital perspective, is going to be exponential. So it isn't a burden. It shouldn't be seen as a compliance issue or a nice to have. It is just the right thing to do if you want your business to thrive, and I would say survive.
Brilliant, thank you. And in terms of that, it's also different looking and solving problems in different ways. I always say we don't always have to be and do the same thing as everyone else. Sometimes part of being an entrepreneur, or part of being different from another company, is to look at things creatively. And often it takes somebody who has that creative ability, yes,